The Persian Empire was not only the first empire in human history to span across Asia, Europe, and Africa, but also a pioneer in imperial governance models that later successful empires would emulate. The story of Persia begins around 2000 BC when Sumerians, Akkadians, and other ethnic groups living in Mesopotamia had already developed highly advanced civilizations. For more details, you can check out my previous episode on this topic. At the same time, Aryans from Central Asia began migrating to this area in large numbers. The two main Aryan tribes were the Medes and Persians. When they first arrived, it was during the peak of the Assyrian Empire, so most Aryan tribes submitted to Assyria's rule. However, as the Assyrian Empire gradually declined, the Medes grew restless and joined forces with Babylonians to overthrow the Assyrians' rule, leading to the fall of the Assyrian Empire in 612 BC. The Babylonians and Medes then ruled this vast region. Meanwhile, the Persians living there did not want to be under Median rule and began moving eastward around 700 BC, settling north of Zagros Mountains, where they established a kingdom named after their ancestor Achaemenes, hence the name Achaemenid Empire for later Persian empires. Shortly after its establishment, the empire split into two parts, Anshan and Persis. It wasn't till Cyrus II, grandson of Anshan's King Cyrus, I ascended to the throne in 559 BC that he unified both regions again. Under his leadership, Persia entered an imperial phase characterized by expansionist policies. In the east he conquered lands including Darien, Margiana, Khwarezm, Sogdia, Bactria, Arachosia, and Gandhara, extending Persian territory to northern India, southern Kopat Dag Mountains, and Helmand River Basin. He built 7 cities along the border to secure it. In the west, he defeated Lydia and expanded his domain into Asia Minor. Many might think Cyrus II was a bloodthirsty tyrant like Qin Shi Huang of China. However, the opposite is true. Cyrus was one of the most respected ancient monarchs in history. He forbade his troops from looting or burning cities, protected social stability, maintained order in conquered regions, and safeguarded religious beliefs of different peoples. He also freed enslaved nations under Babylonian rule, such as the Jews who returned to their homeland. Conquered kings lived comfortably under Persian rule, leading many local rulers to welcome him willingly, calling him a divinely chosen king. Greek historian Herodotus called him a benevolent father, while Xenophon referred to him as an exemplary human being. Alexander the Great also looked up to Cyrus as his role model. After this, it is clear where Alexander got some of his policies from. Despite never losing battles, Cyrus the Great met his match against the Massachene nomads in Central Asia led by Queen Tomyris. When he heard about her husband's death and sent envoys with marriage proposals, she ignored him completely. Enraged, Cyrus attacked them, but after defeating their prince's army, executed the captured prince. Upon hearing this news, Queen Tomyris personally led an army against Cyrus in a brutal battle where she emerged victorious, killing Cyrus and putting his head in a vat of blood. Thus, Cyrus the Great died in 530 BC, succeeded by his son Cambyses II, who continued expanding the empire. Perhaps remembering his father, Saint Cambyses avoided challenging nomadic tribes and instead targeted Egypt with its ancient civilization. With Arab assistance, he crossed Sinai Desert to reach Nile Delta in 525 BC. Legend has it that during a siege of Pelusium, Persians used cats as shields due to Egyptians' reverence for them, forcing the city's surrender. This shows Cambyses was unlike his father regarding respect for other cultures and would resort to any means necessary to achieve goals. Despite these methods, he conquered all of Egypt, marking its first foreign rule. However, Cambyses' luck soon ran out. After conquering Egypt, overconfident in victory without proper preparation, he marched towards Nubia, but returned empty-handed due to lack of supplies halfway through. Then came another crisis. In 522 BC, a priest named Gaumata staged a rebellion claiming to be the king's brother Bardia, who had been secretly executed by Cambyses. Upon hearing this news, Cambyses rushed back from Egypt, only to die en route due to an infection caused by a leg injury. Without an heir, Persia fell into chaos with various uprisings breaking out across its territories. According to the Behistun inscription, order was restored by Darius, who came from another branch of Achaemenid royal family, put down the Gaumada rebellion, married Cyrus the Great's daughter Atossa, ascended to become Darius it, thus revitalizing the Persian Empire. Of course, the Behistun inscription was written by Darius I himself to praise his own achievements. Whether the person who claimed to be Prince Bardia was actually a fake Gaumada or not, and whether Darius really was from the Achaemenid royal family, we can know for sure. But one thing is undeniable: Darius I was indeed an emperor with both military prowess and political acumen. From 520 BC to 519 BC, he first put down all rebellions in various regions. Then he resumed expansion again, conquering multiple Thracian tribes as well as almost the entire European Black Sea coast region, including parts of Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and Russia. Only then did he return to Anatolia. By this point, the Persian Empire had already developed into an empire spanning Asia, Europe, and Africa. This was the first time in human history that such a vast empire was established, so how to effectively manage it naturally became a difficult problem. But this didn't stump Darius I. He was the founder of centralized authority and provincial system. After ascending to the throne, he spent a lot of effort and time systematically dividing the Persian Empire into 20 provinces, each with its own governor. So this system is also called the satrapy system. The main tasks of the governors in the Persian Empire's provinces were twofold: first, ensuring their province paid tribute on time; second, maintaining stability in their province by suppressing uprisings and defending against invasions. Therefore, besides the army directly stationed by the central government, each governor also needed to maintain his own military force. This might make it seem like the governors had a bit of autonomy like feudal lords, but that is not quite right. Although there was potential for hereditary succession, if they performed poorly, they could be dismissed by the king. Moreover, provincial military command, financial oversight were separated into three powers. The governor's power was great, but he must collaborate with the military commander, royal scribe, and treasurer. It wasn't just one person making all the decisions. The king would also send inspectors called kings' eyes to supervise all local officials, so each province was like a semi-autonomous small kingdom, while still being strongly constrained by the imperial central government. The system created by Darius I can be said to provide an effective governance model for later expansive empires, such as the Roman Empire. But what is the main difference between this unification model of the Persian Empire and that of China? I think it mainly lies in inclusiveness. Emperor Qin Shi Huang's unification was not one that embraced diversity, but rather a thorough assimilation of culture and administration. So it unified weights and measures, currency, laws, script, appointed all officials nationwide, and adopted a uniform tax system across the country, allowing only one standard and voice in any field. But the Persian Empire's unification was based on diversity. The amount and method of tribute each province should pay were different. Darius would adjust taxes according to the fertility of the soil and variety of products in that region. Among the 20 provinces, some needed to pay gold coins, others silver coins, while still others only had to pay local specialties. For example, a certain province famous for horse breeding had to present 360 white horses annually as tribute. Moreover, each province could retain its own laws, customs, and religion. Local judges, elders, etc. were usually appointed by locals. From the Behistun inscription, we can see that the Persian Empire really took into account multi-ethnicity and multiculturalism. Even official documents were written in multiple ethnic languages. Due to Darius I's system and effective governance, the Persian Empire reached its peak under his rule. Therefore, he was also given the title of Great King after Cyrus the Tantine, known as Darius the Great. However, like Cyrus the Great, Darius the Great also stumbled in late-life foreign expansion wars. Cyrus lost to nomadic tribes on the steppe while Darius lost to a tiny Greece. In 492 BC, Darius appointed Mardonius as commander-in-chief and began advancing towards Greece along the Troad. But before Persian naval forces reached Greece, They were defeated by an unexpected storm at sea. Over 300 warships and more than 20,000 soldiers sank to the bottom of the sea. Thus, the Persians retreated back to Persia without a fight. Darius the Great naturally wouldn't give up so easily, launching another expedition 2 years later in 490 BC. This time, learning from past lessons, Persian forces didn't march through Thrace, but directly crossed the Aegean Sea towards Athens. But instead of being afraid, Athenians won a great victory over Persia at Marathon with fewer troops. Undeterred by setbacks, Darius still planned for another expedition to Greece, but he died in the 4th of October 85 BC, so the baton was passed to his son Xerxes I. In 481 BC, Xerxes thoroughly learned from Darius' lessons and made more thorough preparations, mobilizing a larger army. Thus, at first the war indeed advanced smoothly, with Persia ruthlessly ravaging Greece, even burning Athens in 480 BC. But under Timotheus' command, Athenians had already evacuated the city. Soon after, they defeated Persian naval forces decisively in the Battle of Salamis using superior tactics. Then Spartan-led Greek land forces crushed Persian army at Plataea. Thus, Persia's conquest of Greece was basically halted in the following decades. Under Athens' leadership, Greeks continuously counterattacked Persia and gradually expelled Persian influence from the Aegean Sea. In 449 BC, an Athenian envoy signed a peace treaty with Artaxerxes I, son of Xerxes, marking the end of this war. The Persian Empire wasn't the first time they failed in their expansion abroad. So, the loss in the Greco-Persian wars didn't shake the foundation of the empire, but because the Persian Empire indeed suffered heavy losses in this war, it did weaken its prestige and power. Therefore, after that, uprisings across the land were continuous. Although these rebellions were suppressed, they also led to further weakening of national strength. Meanwhile, within the royal family, drama was constant. In 425 BC, when Artaxerxes I died, his son Xerxes II only reigned for 45 days before being killed by his brother Darius II. 2 years later, another brother killed Darius II, ascended to the throne as Artaxerxes II. Soon after Artaxerxes II took power, yet another brother rebelled against him to claim the throne. In the end, Artaxerxes II had to put in a lot of effort to quell the rebellion, throwing his brother into the fire before stabilizing his own position. Then when Artaxerxes II died, similar drama began playing out among his sons. His eldest son Artaxerxes III just ascended to the throne when Cyrus the Younger hired a group of Greek mercenaries to fight for power against him. Unfortunately, Cyrus failed and was killed in battle. In 358 BC, after reigning for 46 years, Artaxerxes died at an old age. His son, by a Greek wife Ocus, emerged victorious from the bloody court struggles and ascended as Artaxerxes III. Learning from past mistakes, Artaxerxes III killed all his brothers and sisters upon ascending to the throne. However, this didn't secure his position firmly. Egypt, which had never submitted to Persian rule, began using its wealth to support anti-Persian uprisings across the empire. Artaxerxes III was forced to campaign against Egypt, but lost to an Egyptian army led by a Greek general. Syria, Asia Minor, Cyprus and Phoenicia also raised their banners of rebellion. The empire was on the verge of collapse. Fortunately, Artaxerxes III was tenacious and used military force combined with financial incentives to quell most rebellions. He then launched another offensive against Egypt and finally achieved a decisive victory, barely maintaining the empire's territory. Subsequently, he relied on Bagoas, an eunuch with political acumen, to manage state affairs, bringing the Persian Empire back to normalcy on the surface. But in 338 BC, power-hungry Bagoas killed Artaxerxes III and enthroned his youngest son as a puppet king, ushering in an era of eunuch dominance. When this young king showed signs of independence, Bagoas even went so far as to kill him. By then, there was no one left in the royal family who could ascend to the throne, so Bagoas found a branch of the royal family with no claim to succession and made them puppet kings, which is Darius III. When Darius III also showed signs of independence, Bagawas planned to kill him again and find another compliant puppet king. But this time Darius III struck first and killed Bagawas. From this we can see that Darius III wasn't incompetent or foolish, he just happened to be born at the wrong time. Because right then Alexander the Great led his Macedonian army over the border. The subsequent story is familiar to those who have watched my episode on the Alexandrian Empire. Darius III used all his strength to save the Persian Empire, but ended up losing battle after battle, dying in 330 BC as a result of military defeat and becoming a fallen king afterward. Alexander the Great conquered the entire Persian Empire and brought it under his rule. Throughout the history of the Persian Empire, what stands out most is frequent wars, from gaining independence when the empire was founded to expanding territory during its peak, then retreating in defeat as it declined. All were scenes of war. This basically set the tone for all subsequent empires. Victory leads to prosperity and defeat leads to decline, rise by force and maintain by force. Additionally, we can see that when the Persian Empire rose, everyone from the emperor to his ministers worked diligently. But as the empire reached its peak, they began indulging in pleasure and vying for power, gradually eroding national strength through court struggles and uprisings, until it disintegrated and was replaced by emerging forces. This also mirrors the development trajectory of all subsequent empires. So, the Persian Empire can be considered a standard model for ancient empires. Later multi-ethnic empires basically followed this script. Indeed, the significance of the Persian Empire in human history lies in the imperial paradigm it established. It was the first to create a sustainable, hierarchical, relatively efficient governance system on a large scale with diverse ethnicities and cultures. In economics, transportation, religious tolerance, etc., it set the basic model for world empires. The most successful subsequent empires, such as the Alexandrian Empire, Roman Empire, Byzantine Empire, Ottoman Empire, etc., all followed this governance model that combined flexible tolerance with iron-fisted suppression. Beyond that, the Persian Empire also left behind an immense legacy of cultural, artistic, and architectural achievements. The majestic capital city of Persepolis, even though it was burned down by Alexander the Great in 330 BC, still astounds visitors with its surviving ruins to this day. The exquisite relief sculptures, inscriptions in multiple languages, and the Daric gold and silver coins all reflect the Persian Empire's fundamental principle of cultural integration and pluralistic coexistence. The empire's dress codes, rituals, and court culture were passed down for millennia afterwards. Moreover, the dualistic cosmology of good and evil in Zoroastrianism, the state religion, had a profound influence on later Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So, although the Persian Empire was heavily demonized in Greek narratives, it is unquestionably one of the most remarkable empires in human history.